The creature in the dark. The last transmission from the mining outpost on Moon Delta V was a single garbled sentence wrapped in static and terror. It's not killing us. It's watching. Then silence. High Command wrote it off as interference. Equipment failure. Another dust storm scrambling signals. But Lieutenant Cade didn't believe in easy answers. Not after the first rescue squad vanished. Not after the second team. His friends never came back. He was sent alone this time. Just a recon drop. Eyes on the ground. Quick in, quick out. No heroics. No glory. Just answers. The kind no one really wanted. His boots crunched over powdered bones and shattered helmets the moment he stepped out of his crawler. The air was thick, still, and wrong. There was no sign of a struggle. No gunfire damage. No blood trails. Just things missing. Gears still hung neatly in racks. Coffee cups sat on desks half full. The only clue was the claw marks, deep, deliberate carvings into the steel walls like something had been caged, and then unchained. Cade moved carefully, his pulse sensing with the eerie hum of the station's flickering lights. He found the command center first, torn open like a can, terminals melted. No signs of life. No bodies. Just absence. But down in the lower mining shafts, the deeper he went, the stranger things became. Symbols, circular and jagged, were scratched into stone, too complex for a beast, and there were things left behind. Crude offerings, broken knives, a child's toy from Earth, cleaned and placed gently on a pedestal of rock. Then he heard the sound. Not footsteps, not breathing. Just weight, shifting weight, something massive moving with purpose. Cade gripped his rifle and stepped into the central chamber of the mine. And there it was. It was not a soldier. It was not an animal. It was not something he had ever seen before. Taller than any human exosuit, its body was thick with armor that pulsed with a strange red energy. Its face was hidden behind a helmet shaped like a snarling beast. Claws the size of meshites hung from its hands. A tail tipped with a blade swayed slowly behind it. It was built to kill, no question. And Cade knew he would die in that moment. But the monster didn't charge. Instead, it stepped forward, then stopped, its claws lowered. The red energy faded from its armor. And then, impossibly, it dropped to one knee before him. Slowly, like it had done this 1,000 times before. Like it remembered something ancient. Cade stared, frozen. "What? What are you doing?" he whispered. The creature tilted its head. Then, in a broken, low voice that rattled the chamber walls, it spoke. "Was not your kind who did this." Cade's heart thudded. "What do you mean? Who did what?" The beast's fingers curled into fists. It raised one arm and pointed at the walls, at the symbols, the offerings, the forgotten things. And then it touched its chest. Its voice trembled this time. "They told me to kill, but the memories are wrong." Cade lowered his weapon, not sure why. Maybe because something in the way it knelt felt more human than anything he'd seen in weeks. Maybe because he saw its hands shaking. The silence between them stretched until a sound from the tunnel broke it, something approaching. Heavy, metallic, inhuman. The beast stood, slowly. Its glowing eyes narrowed. And then it turned, stepping between Cade and the sound, protecting him. And in that moment, Cade realized something horrifying. This creature, this monster engineered for war, wasn't the threat. Something else was coming. And it was what the beast had been running from all along. Origin of the kneeling beast. When Cade opened his eyes, he expected to see darkness, cold, death. Instead, he saw a dull, flickering orange glow and the heavy, distant sound of dripping water. His chest ached, his shoulder throbbed, but he was alive. And the thing that should have killed him hadn't. He sat up slowly, wincing, taking in the alien space around him. They were deep underground, deeper than the mine records had ever shown. Natural rock formed the walls, but strange metal veins twisted through them like roots, pulsing faintly with energy. Nearby, resting silently by the wall, sat the creature, the one they called a beast. But now, without the rage glowing from its armor, it looked tired. Not wounded, not weak, just tired in a way Cade understood. The kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting yourself. It turned toward him, almost sensing his thoughts. "You are awake," it said. Its voice was clearer this time. Mechanical, yes, but layered with something raw, like gravel rubbed against sorrow. Cade didn't reach for his weapon. Not this time. "You saved me," he said. The creature nodded once. Then it stood and walked toward a carved alcove. From inside it, it retrieved a small object, smooth, black, and humming. A fragment of something old. Something it had hidden. "This is not mine," it said, "but it responds to me. To you." When Cade took the object, it grew warm in his palm. It shimmered faintly, and for a second, he saw something. Images that weren't his own. A field of stars. Burning cities. A small child. Laughing. Not human. A human hand reaching out to touch it. "What is this?" Cade asked, shaken. The creature looked away. Truth, or the beginning of it. And then it told its story. Its name was Ikaran. That wasn't a designation or code. It was a name, given before the pain. Before the chains, before the Skarn took what was once a people and turned them into tools. Soldiers. Machines. Ikaran had once been born, not built. Flesh before armor. Soul before silence. But the Skarn did not care for origin. They erased what came before and replaced it with hate. Implanted false memories. Images of humans slaughtering Ikaran's kind. Children burned. Homes shattered. Over and over. Until obedience became instinct. Until kneeling became submission. But something went wrong. The first time Ikaran saw a human beg for another's life, he hesitated. The programming screamed, "Kill." The memory said, "Crush." But something beneath the surface broke. He didn't kill. And when the Skarn realized, they punished him. Rewrote him. But the hesitation never vanished. It grew. He ran. Ikaran had been hiding in these tunnels for weeks now, fighting the override that kept pulling at his thoughts like claws in his brain. Every time he saw a human, something deeper stirred. A voice, buried and fragile. A feeling that said, "This is not your enemy." When he saw Cade, wounded, defenseless, weapon raised but eyes calm, it became too loud to ignore. So he dropped his blade. Not out of mercy. Not out of programming. But because something in him remembered. Not the false memories planted by the Skarn, but something older. Something real. Cade listened in silence, absorbing every word like it was being stitched into his soul. He realized then that the beast before him wasn't a monster. It was a prisoner. Not just of its masters, but of a war it never chose. He finally asked, quietly, "Why me? Why didn't you kill me like the others?" Ikaran turned back to him. "Because you hesitated too." And in that dim, forgotten cavern, surrounded by ancient stone and strange light, the soldier and the beast sat side by side, not as enemies, but as survivors of different wars, finally ready to find out who started them. But above them, in the silence of the dead outpost, a signal was being sent. The Skarn had found their lost weapon, and they were coming to take it back. The signal under the soil, the silence beneath Moon Delta V was never truly silent. It pulsed, it breathed, it whispered through the stone like something alive. Cade didn't notice it at first, not while trying to piece together the truth about Ikaran, not while trying to stay alive. But now, in the quiet space between stories, he heard it. A low, rhythmic pulse beneath the rock. Not mechanical, not artificial. Ancient. Ikaran noticed it too. He stopped mid-step, his massive form suddenly still, like a beast listening to the tremble of the earth. "It's calling again," he murmured, more to himself than to Cade. Closer this time. They followed the sound through tunnels older than the outpost, older than the scarn, maybe older than human memory. The walls changed as they went, becoming smoother, darker, humming with a frequency it seemed to slip into their bones. Symbols appeared. Not scarn, not human, something else. Flowing curves mixed with sharp edges, language etched with purpose, as if meant to last forever. At the center of it all, buried under layers of stone and sealed behind a wall of fused metal, they found the source. A black spire, no taller than a man's chest, glowing with faint blue veins like starlight trapped in crystal. It stood in the center of a chamber that hummed with energy, untouched by time or dust. And beside it, resting gently in a carved cradle of stone, was a device, round, delicate, and unmistakably familiar. It was human. Cade approached slowly, his fingers brushing the edge of the ancient console. The moment his skin made contact, the spire flared to life. A beam of light shot into the chamber's ceiling, and for a second, the air itself seemed to freeze. The message began to play. Not in English, not at first, but in a forgotten dialect of early Earth, something used by deep space colonists centuries ago. And yet, Cade understood every word, not through knowledge, through feeling, as if the meaning had been buried inside him, waiting to be pulled out. "We remember your mercy," the voice said. Calm, distant, human. When the flames came, and we could not run, you stayed. You held our children. You fought beside us. And though the stars burned and the skies broke, we never forgot. The message looped, again and again, a beacon, not a warning, but a memory. Ikaran stood still, eyes glowing dimly as he watched. "They were here," he whispered. "Your kind, and mine. Together, before the scarn came." Cade's voice cracked. "They wiped it all away. They made us forget." "No," Ikaran said, stepping forward. "They made me forget. You remembered. Your people left this. For us both." Cade looked up at him, truly seeing him for the first time. Not just a beast, but a connection to something buried too deep for war to destroy. But before the moment could settle, the hum shifted. Deeper, colder, corrupted. A new signal had begun. Sharp, angry, scarn. Cade turned to the console, hands racing over the interface, trying to shut it down, to block the trace. "They're coming," he said. "This place, this message, it's broadcasting again." Ikaran's expression darkened. "They'll burn it. We can't let them." Above them, in orbit, scarn warships began to descend. Shadows moved across the sky, blotting out the stars. And deep in the mine tunnels, the temperature dropped as the air filled with the cold breath of approaching war. Cade backed away from the spire, gripping the human artifact tightly. "Can you fight them?" Ikaran didn't answer at first. He walked to the spire, placed one hand on it, and closed his eyes. His armor pulsed with blue light, mirroring the signal's rhythm. When he finally spoke, his voice was no longer broken. "Not as their weapon," he said, "but maybe as your shield." As they prepared to face the darkness rising around them, the ancient message kept playing behind them, soft, steady, and full of hope. "We remember your mercy." Betrayal in the blood. The tunnels trembled. Dust rained from the stone ceiling as the first scarn transport slammed into the surface above. It wasn't just a warship. It was a hammer, crashing into the moon with deliberate violence. They weren't coming to reclaim Ikaran. They were coming to erase the shame of his disobedience, to burn the proof he had uncovered. And they would destroy anyone near it. Cade tightened his grip on the artifact. It pulsed in his palm, like a living thing scared for its own future. Ikaran stepped in front of him without a word. The blue glow from his armor intensified, the old red completely gone now. He looked stronger, not in size, but in clarity. He knew who he was. He had chosen. They ran. The winding tunnels became a blur of light and shadow. Each step brought the echo of scarred boots closer. Through hidden passageways Icaron had carved during his exile, they fled downward, toward a place he said was safe. But safety was never part of the plan. They reached a wide chamber, dark, ancient, full of cracked statues and crumbling murals. Remnants of a world long buried. Cade stared at the walls, which showed alien beings with curved horns standing beside humans in armor, hands raised in peace. The mural was damaged, but one part remained untouched, the largest figure, kneeling before a human child holding a small torch. Before he could speak, the air turned electric. Icaron dropped to one knee, not by choice, but as if gravity itself had betrayed him. His systems sparked. His limbs locked. His breath came ragged through gritted teeth. The scarn had activated something, a remote override. Old code, buried deep inside him, was being dragged back to the surface. Cade rushed to him, but Icaron's voice shook as he said, "No, stay back. I can't hold it." His eyes flickered red for the first time in days. And then the scarn arrived. A squad of black-armored enforcers stormed the chamber, weapons humming, eyes cold with programmed obedience. They ignored Cade. He wasn't the mission. Only the beast mattered. One stepped forward. A high-ranking controller, his armor marked with the cruel spiral that meant purity of order. "Unit Icaron," the controller said, his voice mechanical, dead. "You will return to protocol. You will execute the human. Begin purge cycle." Cade raised his weapon, shaking. He knew he couldn't stop what was about to happen. Icaron rose to his feet, slow and twitching. Every step looked like pain. His arm raised toward Cade, blade unfolding. The artifact in Cade's hand dimmed. "Don't do this," Cade whispered. "You're not theirs anymore." The controller spoke again. "Kill him." And then, the voice inside Icaron broke through. Not a memory, not a command. A question. Why? That single thought shattered something inside him. With a roar, Icaron turned, not toward Cade, but toward the controller, and drove his blade into the stone floor beside him. Energy exploded in every direction. The scarn reacted too late. Icaron moved like a storm unchained. His claws found gaps in their armor. His tail tore through machinery, and his fists crushed their commands beneath broken steel. He spared no rage, but he also spared lives. Any soldier who dropped their weapon, who backed away in fear, was not harmed. He disarmed them, disabled them, but he didn't kill. Cade stared, stunned. This wasn't war. It was something higher. A choice made every second. A refusal to be what he was built to be. When the chamber fell quiet, only the controller remained, broken, gasping. Icaron stood over him, energy pulsing beneath his armor, but his claws stayed still. "Your orders mean nothing now," Icaron said. The controller looked up, blood trailing from his mouth. "You were ours." "I was never yours," Icaron whispered. And then, from the shadows, a soft voice spoke. "No, you were ours once." They turned. Chained to the far wall, half buried in stone, was an old figure wrapped in faded robes, her face lined, her eyes glowing faint blue. "Oh," Cade started. The woman smiled, weakly. "I am a keeper. The last of the ones who remembered the old truth. We tried to hide it, to protect it. I failed. But you..." She looked at Icaron, tears in her eyes. "You remembered." She told them of the Scarn's rise, how they stole warriors from peaceful races, twisted their histories, erased all records of alliance. Humans and Icaron's kind had once shared the stars, fought side by side, bled for each other. The kneeling was never submission, it was reverence, trust. And now it had returned. The keeper's strength faded, but before she closed her eyes, she pressed something into Cade's hand. A data crystal. "Take it," she whispered. "Show them." The truth will break their war. And then she was gone. The artifact pulsed again, stronger now. So did the crystal. But the battle was far from over. Above, the Skarn fleet was preparing to wipe the entire moon clean. And this time, they weren't coming to reclaim a weapon. They were coming to bury a memory. The rising of the beast. The skies above Moon Delta burned. Columns of fire rained down from orbit as the Skarn fleet began their purge. Not a strike of precision, but a wide, merciless cleansing. They weren't looking for survivors. They were trying to unwrite everything. The truth in the vault, the message in the stone, the memory of peace, all of it, erased before it could spread. Deep in the tunnels, Cade and Ikaran moved like shadows chased by flame. The walls shook. Ash fell like snow. The ground split open in places, revealing ancient veins of energy long buried beneath the moon's crust. The artifact glowed stronger with every step, like it knew the end was close, and was begging not to be forgotten. Cade's heart pounded, not from fear, not anymore, but from purpose, from the weight of what they carried. The crystal given by the Keeper throbbed against his chest like a heartbeat. It held more than just data. It held memory. Stories. Images of children laughing under alien suns, of beasts kneeling not in defeat, but in honor, of humans extending open hands to clawed ones, not for power, but for friendship. Ikaran didn't speak as they ran. His face was calm, but beneath his armor, something had changed. The blue glow that once flickered now pulsed like lightning through him. His steps were no longer hesitant, no longer reactive. He wasn't running from his past now. He was running toward it. They emerged into the hollow shell of the mining colony just as the sky cracked open. A second warship descended, black and vast, shaped like a blade, turned upside down. It carved a path of destruction across the outpost, flattening towers and turning metal into dust. Skarn troopers poured from it like insects from a hive. Cade raised his weapon, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. This wasn't a battle he could win. But he didn't lower it either. He stood his ground beside the beast. Then Ikaran stepped forward, alone. He didn't roar. He didn't raise his claws. He just walked into the center of the burning plaza, the wind whipping fire and ash around him. And then he stopped. He knelt, but not like before. This time, he placed his blade into the ground with both hands. He looked up, not at the Skarn, but at the sky, as if speaking to something beyond it. And then, with a voice that echoed across the moon, he said, "I remember who I am." His armor split open, revealing what was beneath, not just metal and wires, but living, breathing flesh. Scarred, torn, but still alive, still fighting. The Skarn aimed their weapons, Cade shouted, but before a single shot was fired, the artifact in his hand erupted in light. The signal exploded outward, through the sky, into orbit, across every Skarn ship above. It wasn't a weapon. It was a wave of memory. Raw, pure, ancient. On the ships, the Skarn systems froze. Alarms blared. Screens filled with images not from their own records, but from the truth buried long ago. Images of Ikaran's people dancing under blue suns with humans, building cities together, healing each other's wounded, falling in love, burying their dead side by side. Every soldier paused, and Ikaran stood. His armor reignited, not in red, not in blue, but in white, pure, blinding, the color of peace, of unity. The weapon once made to kill had become something else entirely. He looked back at Cade. "They see it now," he said. "They know." The Skarn commander on the ground gave a final order. "Wipe them out." Memory was dangerous. Truth was dangerous. But before the shot landed, a different voice rang out. Small, trembling. A Skarn soldier, young, barely armored, stepped forward and dropped his rifle. Then another, and another. One by one, they laid down their weapons, not from fear, but from something older. Recognition. They remembered too. The artifact fell silent, its work complete. The war for now had stopped. Ikaran walked back to Cade, his silhouette glowing in the firelight. "We're not finished," he said. "Not yet. The Council must see this. The galaxy must see this." Cade nodded. "Then we show them." And far above them, for the first time in decades, the stars watched in silence, not as witnesses to war, but as the first light of something new. Echoes of old Earth. The stars stretched out like ancient eyes, watching from the dark as the ship slipped silently through space. Inside the cockpit, Cade sat beside Ikaran, neither speaking, both knowing the silence was more than absence. It was a bridge, stretching between two lives that had never been meant to meet. Now they were tangled. Forever. The human fleet had met them halfway. Weapons drawn. Faces cold. Trust, after all, is slow to return when betrayal has lived in your bones for generations. To them, Ikaran was still the enemy. A living reminder of the war that had taken too many and returned too few. But Cade had stood in front of them and said 5 words that silenced every room they echoed through. He remembered what we forgot. Still, it wasn't enough. Not yet. So they kept moving. The artifact, now dim but steady, guided them through forgotten routes. Ancient navigation points hidden deep in human archives no one had dared open in centuries. It led them beyond the charted systems, to the edge of a nebula once thought dead. There, hidden in the shadow of a fractured planet, they found it. A vault. Not a bunker, not a weapon facility, but something different, older than both of their species' wars. It was built with care, not for defense, but for remembrance. Vines of silver wrapped the entrance. Holograms flickered to life at their touch. Children's laughter, alien music, languages layered in joy and sorrow. A place not made to store data, but to hold stories. Cade stepped inside, his breath catching. There were books, not digital files, but real ones. Pages, ink. Pressed between them were drawings made by both human and alien hands. One showed a child with pointed ears hugging the human soldier. Another, a massive creature kneeling before a woman who had lost her leg in battle, offering her a piece of fruit. Ikaran walked slowly, each step heavy, like he was walking through a memory he didn't remember having. His fingers touched the walls. They lit beneath his hand. "This was ours," he said, "before they made me forget." He found a pedestal in the center of the vault, and in it a small metal cube, dusty, untouched. When he picked it up, it opened like a flower. A projection filled the room. A council chamber, massive, beautiful, filled with beings from a dozen worlds. And at the center of it, a human ambassador standing beside an ancestor of Ikaran, tall and proud. The ambassador said, "Let this bond never be broken, not by time, not by war, not even by death." And then the image glitched, faded, and disappeared. Cade sat down hard, heart aching. "We were never enemies," he whispered. Ikaran nodded. "They rewrote history, made my kind into monsters, made your kind into executioners, and we both believed it." Cade pulled the keeper's crystal from his vest. "This changes everything. We take this to the council. We show them." But Ikaran didn't move. His eyes were distant. "I'm not sure they'll listen." "They have to," Cade said. "Because if they don't, we'll never stop bleeding." Ikaran looked at him, voice quieter than ever. "They won't listen to a beast." Cade stood, holding the crystal tightly. "Then they'll listen to a man. And you're more human than half the leaders on that council." Outside the vault, the stars shimmered gently, as if remembering what had once been. The vault doors sealed behind them, not in mourning, but in peace. As they left, Ikaran glanced back once, his voice barely a whisper. "I remember now." And somewhere, hidden in the currents of space, a forgotten message echoed again. "We remember your mercy." The beast and the boy. The Great Hall of the Interspecies Galactic Council was carved from crystal mined in the heart of a dead star. Its walls shimmered with energy, reflecting the faces of hundreds of species who had once vowed to build a future together. But peace, like memory, was fragile, and it had been a long time since anyone remembered why those promises were made in the first place. Cade walked into that hall with dust still clinging to his boots and a data crystal clutched in his hand. Beside him, Ikaran towered like a myth returned to life. His armor, once forged for war, now bore no weapons. Instead, across his chest, he wore a simple white sash, a symbol of surrender, of choice, of peace. But the council didn't rise to greet him. Instead, whispers filled the chamber. Old wounds ran deep. The sight of a beast, that beast, standing in their house was enough to stir fear in even the bravest delegates. The human representative rose first, gray-haired and bitter. "This creature should be in chains," he said. "He slaughtered our colonies." Ikaran didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He simply lowered his eyes. "I did," he said, "and I grieve every one of them." A hush swept the chamber. No one had expected him to speak. Even fewer had expected him to accept blame. Cade stepped forward, heart pounding. "He didn't come to beg, and I didn't come to defend a killer. We came to show you what's been hidden." He placed the crystal into the center console. What followed was not just a recording. It was truth. Images unfolded in the air, moving, breathing, aching. Scenes from the ancient vault. Children of both species playing beneath alien trees. Soldiers holding the line together against a greater enemy. Beasts kneeling to humans not out of fear, but love. Sacrifice. Devotion. Then came the memory of the Skarn's corruption, the rewiring, the lies, the way they erased the past and replaced it with pain. The chamber sat in stunned silence. Even the human representative, once so rigid, now clutched the edge of his seat, eyes wide. A voice, old, cracking, rose from the far side of the room. A member of the elder race, long retired. Her name was Amariel, and she had lived longer than most of the council had even been born. "I was there," she said. "I saw the kneeling. It was not submission. It was trust." The silence broke like glass. One by one, the delegates began to speak, some with tears, some with apologies, others with questions, but not one with hate. Ikaran stood silent until all had spoken. Then he raised his voice, steady and full. "I was made to kill, programmed to hate, trained to destroy. But when I knelt before your soldier, I remembered who I was. I am not your weapon, and I will never be your enemy again." Then he turned to Cade, and for a long moment, they simply looked at one another. Not human, not beast, brothers. The council vote was unanimous. The war was declared a lie. Records were unsealed. The vault's contents were made public. Statues that once stood to glorify conquest were taken down. In their place, new ones rose. The first was of a towering warrior, kneeling not in defeat, but in humility. Before him stood a young soldier, offering his hand. The plaque beneath it read, "We kneel only to protect." Years passed. The galaxy changed. But the story lived on. Ikaran became a symbol, not of power, but of choice, of what it meant to break free from what you were told you had to be. He traveled the stars, not as a soldier, but as a teacher. He spoke in schools, sat with orphans, helped rebuild what war had broken. And Cade, he never returned to the battlefield. Instead, he became the first ambassador to the new alliance, not with speeches or armor, but with honesty, with memory, with the truth. On the anniversary of the moon's liberation, a child approached Ikaran during a public ceremony. She was small, barely taller than his leg, and in her hand was a single flower. Without hesitation, Ikaran knelt. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. And the crowd, every species, every language, rose to their feet. Not in protest, but in thanks, because the beast who was ordered to kill had chosen to kneel instead, and in doing so, he had reminded the galaxy what it meant to be truly free.